Hi there, I'm Wendy and welcome to my channel where I share knitting and crochet tutorial videos for my projects and techniques. And today's video is all about grafting and Kitchener stitch for socks. So if you're a newbie knitter and you've made your socks and you've got to that point in the pattern where they say, right now, just graft your stitches together with Kitchener stitch, this is the video for you. So just before we start, if you're new to my channel, then please consider subscribing and clicking that notification bell. And if you like the video, it would be lovely if you gave me a thumbs up as well. So to do this method, all we need is a wool type darning needle. I tend to like a blunter type for this, and a small pair of scissors to cut your ends afterwards. So when I'm showing people how to graft together the ends of their toes on their socks, I like to show them a basic intro on grafting itself, where you've got two sets of live stitches like we have here at the ends of our socks, and you're just joining them together. So I'm just going to show you a short clip on how you will actually graft two pieces of fabric together, and that really helps you when you're then working Kitchener stitch directly off the needles. So we'll take a look at what grafting actually is, and then we'll get straight on with grafting the two sides of this sock together with Kitchener stitch. This is the left-handed video, so if you're right-handed, I'll pop a link in above here now and in the description notes below to take you to the right-handed video. So I've made these two little samples here, and they're both stocking stitch, and the top edges haven't been cast off or bound off. So they're both live stitches and they're both raw edges. But what I want to do is I want to join both of those edges together with a seamless appearance. So I'm going to do that with a needle and a yarn. Now I'm going to use a different colour, but if I was using the same colour thread, then it shouldn't notice when I've finished all the work. So it's like doing a little running stitch from one side of the work and then coming across to the other side of the work and back and forth. But you've just got to be a little bit careful with your technique. So I'm going to be referring to the knit side of my stocking stitch as the front of my work, and I'm going to be referring to the purl side of my stocking stitch as the back side of my work. So I'm going to pop these two together, and then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to bring it up through the back and through the center of one of the stitches. Now it doesn't matter which side you start on, and it doesn't matter whether you're doing this left-handed or right-handed. It's going to be the same principle. So I've come up with my needle has come up from the back of my work through the center of the first stitch and come out of the front. Now I'm going to jump across to the other side, and it's almost like doing a running stitch. I'm going to go in through the center of the front of the first stitch to the back, and then I'm going to come from the back through the center to the front of the next stitch. So if you can see that more clearly, and then I'm going to take my needle through. There we go. And I like to leave my stitches loose until I've finished at the end, and then I tighten it all up. So now I'm going to jump back across to this side, but I'm going to go into the stitch where I just came out of, where my pink thread is. So I'm going to pop my needle through the center of that stitch that I just worked in on the first side. So I'm going from the front to the back, and then with the next stitch I'm going to come from the back to the front. So I'm coming out the back of the stitch and to the front of the stitch. So I'm going to bring that out as well. So now I'm going to jump across, and I'm going to go back into that stitch where I last came out of. So I'm going to go in from front to back, up to the next stitch, and then come out from the back to the front. Okay, and then I'm going to bring my needle and thread through. And again, I'm leaving this a little bit loose. And then again, I'm going to jump across to the other side of my work. And where that pink thread came out of, I'm going to go back into the same stitch from the front to the back. And then I'm going to go to the next stitch and I'm going to come out the center of the stitch from the back to the front. And again, I'm going to jump across to the other side of my work, and where the pink stitch came out of my cream knitting, I'm going to go through the front to the back and go across to the next stitch and come out from the back to the front. And this is the method that I just keep repeating all the way along. And then my very last stitch now to do is coming across and going back into the front to the back of the stitch, and then coming out from the back to the front. So now I'm going to turn it around, and when we take a look at it, we can see that we've got a row of stitches. But I always like to leave those stitches a little bit loose when I'm working them, so that afterwards I can go along and I can just tighten it up. So I'm just going to work from this direction. So I'm just going to start tightening them up to make them a little bit more even. So I just take my needle through either side of the stitch and work my way along. But now when we take a look at it, you can see we've got the pink line of stitches going along the middle. But if that was in the same colour, if that was in the cream, that would hardly notice at all. So when it comes to Kitchener stitch, you're doing this on the needles. So this is why it's a little bit more difficult to visualise. But I hope this has helped give you an idea of what you're doing with Kitchener stitch. So now we've taken a look at what grafting actually is, connecting these two live edges together. I've cut my yarn so that it's about 18 inches long, and that's approximately 45 centimetres, and I've threaded my darning needle. Now I've just changed over to two short double pointed needles just to stop the clicking against the surface here, but it doesn't matter whether you're still using your circular needles or you're using double pointed needles. So I'm going to be calling the knit side of our work the right side, and that applies to both the upper side of the sock and the lower side of the sock. And then the inside of our work with the purl side, I'm going to be calling that the wrong side. So I've got my work looking at me and I've got my thread coming towards me. And it doesn't matter which side of your work your thread is coming out of. You'll just be working towards the opposite side each time. So to make the initial setup, I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to take it across to the opposite side of my work, and I'm going to take my darning needle to come out from the wrong side of my work to the right side. So that's going from the purl side of our work to the knit side. So that's that done. And then I'm going to take the yarn under the needles and across, and I'm going to take it through from the front of my work. So I'm going through the center of the stitch that's just sitting on the needle, so just underneath the needle but above my work, and I'm going to bring that out as well. And that has just secured our thread into place so that we're ready to start. So now I'm going to go across to the opposite side of my work, and I'm taking the yarn under the needles but above my work, and I'm going to go in from the knit side to the purl side. So that's going from the front of my work to the back, through under the needle, and then I can just slip that stitch off the needle. Then on the same side of my work, I'm going to come out from the back of my work to the front. So I'm going to go from the purl side to the knit side and leave the stitch on the needle. Okay, so I'll just give it a little tug. I don't want to tug it too tightly. Then I'm going to come underneath my work across to the other side, and I'm going to look at my work, and I'm going to take my darning needle directly under that double pointed needle and go from the front of my work to the back. So that's going from the knit side to the purl side. And when I've taken that through, I can then just take that stitch off the needle. Then I'm going to stay on the same side, and I'm going to take my darning needle from the back of my work to the front underneath. I've taken that darning needle underneath my knitting needle from the purl side to the knit side, bring it through and leave it on. So the principle of this is that we're working 2 sets of stitches on each side. And when we work the first stitch, we take the stitch off the needle, and when we work the second stitch, we leave the stitch on. Then we go over to the other side and we repeat the same thing. So I'm going to go in from the front of my stitch to the back of my stitch. So I'm going from the knit side to the purl side. And I'm taking the stitch off the needle. Then I'm going to go from the back of my work to the front. So I'm going from the purl side to the knit side and leaving it on. So then I'm coming across underneath my needles to the other side of my work. And I'm going to take my needle from the front to the back. So that's from the knit side to the purl side. Take the stitch off the needle. Then on the same side, come out from the back to the front of the stitch, and that's the purl side to the knit side, and leave the stitch on the needle. So now I'm going to come across again to the other side of my work. And I like to leave my threads a little bit loose and then tighten them up earlier. Like I said with my grafting, I just find that that's easier for me. So I'm going to come under the needle and go from the front to the back of my work. So that's knit side to purl side. Take that stitch off the needle. Then on the same side of my work, come out from the purl side to the knit side. So that's the wrong side to the right side. And then I'm going to leave that stitch on the needle. So again, I'm going to work my next 2 stitches on the opposite side. So I'm taking my yarn underneath the needles across to the other side. And it's going to be from the knit side to the purl side. So I'm going to take it from the knit side to the purl side and slip it off my needle. And then the purl side to the knit side and leave it on. Now I'm coming to the other side. So I'm taking that yarn across and underneath my stitches, and I'm going from the knit side to the purl side and taking that stitch off my needle. And then from the purl side to the knit side and leaving it on. Now I know my stitches look a little bit messy, but as I say, I'm leaving that so I can pull them tightly to the correct tension afterwards. So I'm bringing my yarn underneath the needles, across to the opposite side, going through from the knit side to the purl side and taking that stitch off the needle, and then coming from the purl side to the knit side and leaving it on the needle. And then over to the opposite side, so take my yarn across above my sock and under my needles, and then I'm going to go from the knit side to the purl side and take the stitch off the needle, and then work on the same side, going from the purl side to the knit side. So I'm coming out from the back to the front and leaving it on. Then again, come underneath my needles and go from the knit side to the purl side, take it off the needle, and then on the same side, come from the purl side to the knit side and leave it on. And you can see that I've now just got 3 stitches left on both needles. So I'm taking my yarn across to the opposite side again, and I'm going to go through from the front to the back, from the knit side to the purl side of my stitch, and slip that stitch off the needle. And then from the purl side to the knit side, which is the wrong side to the right side, and leave it on the needle. And take my yarn across to the other side again, and we're going to go from the knit side to the purl side and take it off the needle. Now you will find that once you get down to just having a couple of stitches on your needles, that it feels a little bit sort of unstable, but that's quite normal. Then you're going to stay on the same side and come out from the purl to the knit side, which is the wrong side to the right side, and leave it on the needle. So we've just got our last couple of stitches now, so I'm bringing my yarn across to the other side and going from the knit side to the purl side, and taking it off the needle. And on my last stitch, I'm coming from the purl side to the knit side, which is the wrong side to the right side of my work, and leaving it on. And then I bring it back onto the opposite side and go from the knit side to the purl side, right side to wrong side, and take it off the needle. And then finally come from purl side to knit side, so wrong side to right side, and keep it on. So now we've got this, I can literally just take my yarn across one more time, and I just go from the right side to the wrong side and take it off the needle. And then I'm just going to bring it from the wrong side to the right side on my last stitch. So the last one was wrong side to right side, so that's the purl side to the knit side. And then I can take that off the needle. And now when I'm looking at my sock, you can see that I've got these loopy stitches. So I'm now just going to work from the side that I started at the very beginning and just tighten them up. So I've just popped one hand in the sock so that I can just open up the toe of this area. And so I can just use my darning needle to start tightening up these stitches. So I'm just working from that end that I started with, and I'm just gradually coming along, just finding those threads. So I've got something to tighten up with. And that's my grafted toe complete, and all that's left now is to just darn in my end and fasten off. So I think that's looking pretty neat, and it's now ready to match the other sock, and they can just be washed and blocked and they're ready to wear. So I hope you found this useful, and I really hope that this has helped you with understanding grafting and how to go about kitchen stitch. And I hope that you continue to make socks and enjoy making them as much as I do. So again, thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.